A few weeks ago, I saw a guy on the internet who recommended Bartleby the Scrivener. He said it was short, and he said it was a classic. And I said to myself, well, why not give it a try? I never read it. It turns out it really is short. I finished this thing in, I'd say, less than 2 hours, although I didn't put a clock on it. It's a pretty simple story. What happens is a Wall Street lawyer, who also happens to be the guy telling the story, hires a scrivener named Bartleby. Now, a scrivener is a kind of a 19th century word processor. He copies and proofreads stuff all day long. Once Bartleby gets going a little bit in the office, he all of a sudden he decides to stop working. In other words, anytime the lawyer asks him to do something, he goes into a kind of a rope-a-dope and says he'd prefer not to. Amazingly, the lawyer doesn't do anything about it. He doesn't fire him. He doesn't kick him out. He tries all kinds of friendly persuasion, even bribery, and all without any success. Ultimately, Bartleby ends up living in the office. Finally, the lawyer gets frustrated, and he just moves his entire office. But Bartleby stays right where he is. In other words, he turns into a squatter. That goes on for a little while until Bartleby gets arrested. He gets thrown in jail, and while he's there, he all of a sudden decides that he'd prefer not to eat. So as you'd expect, he dies. Now, you would think that's the end of the story, but Herman Melville throws in a little rumor that what had happened to this guy was that he had lost his job at the post office's dead letter office. Melville paints a little picture about how sad dead letters are and suggests maybe working there had turned Bartleby all goofy. My overall reaction to this book? First off, it reads very, very easily. You get drawn into the story simply because it's so strange. You keep expecting something to happen, but as you can tell from my summary, actually nothing really does. So what you've got is basically a pleasant couple of hours spent reading some very smooth-flowing prose. Now, when you finish the story, you end up with a couple of questions, or at least I did. One is, just what is driving this guy Bartleby? What makes him tick? Where does he come from? What's he trying to do? Now, Melville doesn't answer this question. Now, similarly, you wonder why the writer, the lawyer, Bartleby's boss, tolerates all this nonsense from Bartleby. Is it a matter of charity, unbridled generosity, just unwillingness to have a confrontation? You don't really know. So there's some kind of a meaning to this story, but it's not apparent on the surface. Now, I think there are probably a couple of reasons why college professors would assign something like this as required reading. The first one is that because it's so short, the professor has a real chance of getting me and the other guys in the back row to read it and maybe even think about it. And I suppose from the professor's point of view, that's a real plus. The second reason the guy would assign this is because it has no obvious point. It provides a great opportunity for the professor to get his students to spin out all kinds of theories, like about economics and morality and work in the 19th century, stuff like that, and I don't know what. So, you know, it's probably productive in terms of producing essays. Now, there's a lot of stuff on the internet about this story that, quite frankly, I haven't looked at. I get the idea that this thing is a big deal in academia. Now, as you can tell, I don't think it's any great shakes, but then again, what do I know? You might think about giving this thing a try yourself. See what you think. I'll see you next week.